Hi, welcome everyone. Today we have a special guest with us today, Robyn McTague. Welcome, Robyn.
Thanks for having me, Tammy.
Yeah, we'd love to dive in a little deeper with your Enneagram, and we're also going to go into motivational maps because Robyn actually does more than one thing, and they actually work really well together. The other really cool thing is that will be sharing my personal one, and throughout the summit, I think all the viewers will be learning a lot about me because all these wonderful experts will be sharing about who I am. So in many ways, people are gonna really learn about who I am through this. And so thank you once again, Robyn. I'm going to just, excuse me, go through and just introduce Robyn and just share a little bit about her bio. So Robyn McTague is a published author, writer, speaker, and the creator of a life of choice coaching and consulting. She experienced breast cancer, hepatitis C, and many other challenges, which she was able to move forward from. Her 3 C's for life are clarity, comprehension, and creation. She helps individuals, couples, and small business owners create a deeper connection and understanding within themselves, resulting in having improved, successful relationships in life and business. Her areas of expertise include relationships, psychology, motivation, conflict resolution, the Enneagram, numerology, meditation, and metaphysics. So, welcome, Robyn.
Thanks.
So tell us, Robyn, tell us a little bit about, first of all, who you are, tell us a bit about your journey and why you started to do work with Enneagram and motivational maps.
Sure, thanks. Yeah, so for me, I grew up a very curious kid, let's say. Got me in trouble a lot, but yeah, so a lot of trauma in my background, suicidal mom, alcoholic dad, all those different things. So I really didn't understand why people did what they did. So that's why I was so curious about it. And that's why I studied psychology and all these different things to create better understanding. And then what happened for me is I put everyone else first in my life, and I didn't really take care of myself. I didn't know how to do that nurturing for myself. So I ended up with breast cancer when I was 44. And that shifted everything for me. And so I was on one trajectory where I was being promoted to be the next union president. There hadn't been a female doing that position, and I was moving towards it. And then I was having lunch with someone after coming back into work, and they said, "Oh, are you going to run for president?" And out of my mouth came, "No, I'm going to be a healer." And I kind of looked around. It's like, where the heck did that come from?
Wow, interesting.
Yeah, so it just really shifted. And, I got more confident in myself. I learned to teach the metaphysics and learn to go deeper within to myself and connect to my spirit and kind of that love of the universe so I could nurture and care for myself. So with that going deeper, it's like now I could become more independent, left my corporate job, and then met my mentor who did the map. And I saw how accurate that was. And it gave me so much insight into who I was. And one of the pieces that it's based on is the Enneagram, which is a personality profiling system along with a path for growth. And so I went down that deep hole. And yeah, I just love it. There's so much more we can continually learn about ourselves and each other.
Yeah, and it's really what it's all about, really sort of deepening that understanding and relationship with ourselves. And then when we shift it inside ourselves, we change our life, world, business, whatever is it that we're working to improve and want more from. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. I'm curious. Obviously, all these things happened, and that your inner knowing had shared that I'm meant to be a healer, and so I'm curious, so from that awareness coming into working with your mentor with the Enneagram, can you speak about how learning about the Enneagram and perhaps the motivational maps and how that sort of changed you and why it made such a big shift that you decided to do that for other people?
Sure. Yeah, with the map, what I realized was what gave me energy and what didn't. So when I was more in alignment with what felt true for me, because I had some internal conflicts within my own map. I wanted that learning and growing and this high growth. But the thing is, if we're so much in the future, how do we accomplish what we need in the present? And my relationships were suffering as well because I was so focused on the future. And the big piece for me was understanding as an entrepreneur how much those relationships are important, and to kind of reframe that to see I need to keep relationships take time, but also that more connection. And for me, being high growth, it was like, yeah, I can connect with you anytime. I don't need that kind of constant connection where people who are more relational based do. So that helped me to understand I need to keep that connection more with those people. But when I worked corporately, that wasn't important to me. So I just saw those people as needy. And that's just what energized them and what was important to them. So it helped me to be more, not take things so personally, and also understand that different people are energized by different things. So we can accept our differences more as well, and also offer them what they need. And so we can both get our needs met.
And that's super important in the basis of relationship, whether that's our personal relationships or professionally, and being able to like, like fulfill our needs for ourselves and other people. And that tremendously changes the connection, the results we could create with others. And you spoke about this piece of it energizing you. Can you share more about because I believe that the top left corner of your screen, that's the Enneagram. So so those are, I guess, the different personalities that someone might go about. Like, can you just share a bit about how someone determines if, what energizes them? Give it a little bit more sort of juiciness to that.
Sure. Well, for me, when I learned my Enneagram type, and I do want to say that the tests only give us a direction. Really, the work I do with people is the one-on-one, so we can actually go deeper. Because for me, it's like the tests put me in a certain direction, and then I really had to talk to someone and go deeper as to why, because we all do certain behaviors, but it's more about why do we do that. So for me, it helped me to see my type on here is the 6, which is the loyalist or loyal skeptic. And so my need is to really have that certainty. So one of the things that I don't like is uncertainty, but that's part of life. And so I got to see those places where I repeated patterns and behaviors and overdid it because I wanted some particular thing. And to learn to tap into the part in my growth pattern of the courage to step into who I am and learn about the part of me that wants to be loyal to others, and how does that play out in my relationships, and how can I learn to be more loyal to myself, places where I'm overly responsible, over dutiful, those kinds of things where the pattern for me would be overcommitting, for example, and why I was doing that. So then I could relax that kind of personality part, the ego that wants to do more of it because the ego thinks by doing more, we're going to get it. But in fact, we need to relax out of the pattern, be more connected to ourselves in different ways. So there's lots of people that work with the Enneagram in different ways. To me, it's about embodying our full self. So really being present in our body, our heart, and our head. And so I do practices around that to really be able to use the full knowledge and connection within myself and to the universe to move forward in life in a way that doesn't keep me stuck in those patterns that I have been in for so long. So, people talk about feeling like they're in the box. I keep doing these things and want to get out of the box, but they don't know a way of doing it. And to me, that's the biggest part of the Enneagram is helping us to see those ways we view the world and then move beyond the ego to become that part of us that is our true self. And for me, when I'm in that place of being really who I am and relaxing out of the personality, I can hold space for people. I really care about the connection. I want to make sure everyone's included. Like, those gifts of our types are there, but we need to get past that kind of compulsive behavior and patterns to get deeper into what that is so we can express it.
All right, gotcha. So like I'm hearing, like, if, for example, someone who has the certainty within their personality type, for example, it's like, well, if we're wanting to do something different, create a different impact, we're gonna be a bit stuck there if we didn't sort of progress from that internal need to have certainty, because in order to grow, we got to move out of certainty a lot of the times, as you had mentioned, right? And so it's am I understanding that these different types that you're these words around the circle that you are that I'm seeing, is it our personality? Does it represent our personality? Understanding that box, as you say, and then using that information to I guess transcend the ego, so to speak, so that we could sort of be our true self. Like, am I understanding that? I just want to make sure that I'm clear there.
Yeah, so we have bits of each of the 9 types within us. And
Okay.
so, yes, we all have places where we want to have, be right, or to have that connection, or be our unique self, to have the freedom to be who we are, all these different things. But there's one particular path for us that we're most energized or connected to, gives us our fastest and quickest path for growth, that we have like a visceral reaction to it. And when I first learned it and we went around the circle and talked about each of the types, I actually had a physical response. That doesn't happen for
Mm.
everyone. For me, I did. And it was like, wow. And I actually felt tears of recognition. So when
Wow.
we can see ourselves so clearly and see how we can move beyond that feeling trapped in our behavior, it gives us a place of letting go of judgment of ourselves, being kinder to ourselves, more compassion, both to ourselves and to others, because we see why they're doing it, or help to understand why people are doing that, including ourselves. So, I joke about, I worked for a safety organization for over 30 years. And that's part of my type 6, is that it's all about fear and anxiety. So I do what I
Mm.
can to get rid of that. So for me, very much externally oriented. So, I don't know if people know the word projection, but sending that energy out. So for example, if I'm feeling nervous about something, I want to get that energy off of me as my natural reaction. So for example, if in school, if I had to give a presentation, I wanted to do it right away to get over that. The longer I sat,
Mm.
the more anxious I felt. So
Mhm.
if you're a speaker, for example, and you have to wait for 6 people before you speak, that can bring up that anxiety, more so for
Mm.
some people than others. We all have bits, but some people over focus on it. And so if we can learn ways to relax and work with it, then we're not so assertive or aggressive with that behavior.
Hmm. Yeah, I definitely want to like speak about that, but I just want to like backtrack a little bit with what you were saying earlier, right? Because I got shivers as you were talking about it. That like when we look at these personality test assessment tools, and we're looking at these words, that to be able to to be playing some sort of pattern or beingness, whatever we want to call it, and to always make ourselves wrong, and then being able to like recognize, oh wow, this is why I am what I am, and like I don't need to make myself wrong anymore. Like that is like a huge deal, a huge awakening, self-acceptance. That is, yeah, very beautiful in my experience of doing these tests. And so I just wanted to really highlight that because I think a lot of times it feels like just a lot of words. And, but however, when it really lands, in our body and to really see how we are, why we are what we are, like why we do things the way we do things and things like that. And allowing ourselves to just be ourselves, there's so much freedom in that. I just want to like
Absolutely.
say that. So
Yeah.
yeah, and Robyn, I love what you said around like understanding like your personality type and then realizing yeah, well, I wasn't sure if you were talking about yourself versus someone else, but for that particular personality type, it's like knowing that when I have anxiety, that I need to actually externalize it. And like sometimes um, different courses, mentors will tell you that, well, you're just doing that to disperse the energy, and that's such a temporary fix, and that's not the right thing to do. And yet, again, right, understanding that this is part of our internal mechanism is really freeing and empowering in many ways. So I love that, and I'm interested to hear what this is for me as we sort of dive into um, my space of the Tammy land inside of me,
Right.
just to highlight this process even more. So I'm curious, Robyn, is there anything around the Enneagram that you wanted to sort of highlight that it's important for the viewers to listeners to really understand before going into sort of my report?
There's a couple things. One is that we do have bits of all of them in us. So to get really fixated on, oh, I'm just this or I'm just that, it's not about that, right? It's about
Mm,
really using it in a growth mechanism rather than to get more stuck in the type. And this is part of my problem with the kind of superficial stuff we see in social media is
mhm, mhm.
there's a lot of memes and stuff. And so it's a way to get more stuck by saying, oh, I'm just a 6. That's just the way I am. Rather
Mm,
than saying, well, what is it about that? What is it about being like that that both maybe supports me, but maybe doesn't support me, that makes me just see the world in one way and can actually, how can I open myself up to a broader viewpoint? And
mhm.
there's a quote I like to have to give from one of my mentors, Russ Hudson. He's one of my teachers. So the point of it isn't to just be a type, but to use the awareness of our type as a kind of entry into a more full-bodied humanity and a greater and greater capacity to embody and flow with all of the different qualities of our humanness.
That sounds really like deep. My body definitely responded to that, even though that I'm not sure if I caught all the words, but it's like essentially through it's like a window of your soul, and to accept ourselves through that window, and then being able to allow ourselves to be multidimensional in all these different ways, and to allow ourselves to then embody and integrate. Did I summarize that well?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and that's very beautiful.
And I love to, we have different laws we talk about in this Enneagram symbol that's up here, but I also have this as a meditational tool, but we have that unity, right? We have the unity with ourselves and the whole world and the whole universe. So we have 3
Hmm.
laws. We talk about law of 1 of unity, the 3, the triangle. So often we get stuck in the either or. So the Enneagram gives us a way to be with both things to see what emerges, the law of 3. So for
Mhm.
me, a lot of it is knowing, not knowing. If I can hold both of those apparently opposite views or energies, and I just sit with them, what can emerge? And this is constant, right? This is how we move through life. We hold these differences, we let things emerge, and then the next thing emerges, right? And that's just life, it's change. And our ego wants it to be the same. And that's those defense mechanisms we learned when we were little. And this is a way to move beyond that. And then the law of 7 is the lines that you see, and that's for change and growth. So with our types, we get to use the energies in a very specific way for our growth. So when I talk about my story, I'll talk about that a little bit.
Okay, great. Well, I'm just happy to hear that the Enneagram doesn't just put me in a box, and that, you know, it allows for all the change, that we're so multi dimensional beings. And so that I'm really glad to hear that, for one. And Robyn, and actually before we move into my report, I'm curious, like perhaps we should dive into how the Enneagram links with motivational map and how it builds on one another, perhaps before we sort of go into my report, just for, because the intention of this is really to help the listeners really understand the value, the benefits of this personality test.
Yeah, so the map tells us what energizes us. And if we think about conflicts we have with people, often we think it's a personality conflict. Often it's actually a motivational conflict, because we want different things. And I find that, you know, I've done it with couples, I've done it with individuals and teams. So really seeing, and just with even within ourselves, and those conflicts or tensions that can come up. So it's a way to have, again, a neutral language and non-blaming kind of way, when we can say, well, this is what's important to me, and this is what's important to you. And again, build on that, and accept that there are differences, instead of that, oh yeah, because our kind of fallback position is thinking other people think like us. And that's the biggest assumption that we make that's wrong, right?
That's true. That's very true. I mean, I'm guilty as charged as well. Like, as much as I've been in personal development, which is like natural human tendency, we think people like see things like we see them and things like that. So yeah, so I'm hearing that the motivational maps is identifying what actually motivates us to actually want to do what we do. So if I'm understanding that, that sounds like a very powerful thing to know about self, to know that, you know, because then we all get into those days, right? We lose our energy, we lose our flow, momentum, we drop in productivity, right? And so to know what motivates us is kind of a huge deal. And so I'm getting more excited about diving into my map a little further. Like I had done this, like, you know, I don't know, 2 years ago or something like that, but it's, you know, it's been a while, and I just look forward to like getting a little bit of a recap on everything, Robyn. So please dive in when you feel like you're ready to, yeah, really help us see how this magic works.
Okay. Yeah. The other thing I just want to say is that both tools I like because they're dynamic, right? There's constant change. There's other assessments out there. There's nothing wrong with other assessments. You know, people use them in great ways, and a lot of them describe, like there's different terminologies for them. And these are very dynamic, and it's about the growth and using it. Like, you don't just do the map and put it aside, right? It's like something I need to have to say, like you said, the days where I'm not energized, what's missing, and then fulfill that need so that you can get energized again, and you're not just spending 6 days on the sofa watching Netflix.
Yeah. Hopefully we're not staying on the couch too long.
Yeah, exactly. But we're all human. We do it a bit, and that's okay.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to share your map here. And one of the things I like to point out is you get 3 words that kind of describe your top 3 motivators. There are 9, and our top 3 account for about 60 to 70% of our behaviors. And then the lowest one often gives us a lot of good information as well. So for you, purposeful, connector, commercial. And we don't put labels on individuals like, you know, with Myers-Briggs, INTJ, those kinds of things, for a couple of reasons. One is that motivation changes over time. So even in
Mm.
the last 2.5 years, having already done your map, things may have changed for you and your energies may be a little different now. And so that's
Mhm.
why we recommend doing it maybe every 5 years, depending what's going on in your life. Because if you think about when you were even 10 years ago, what energized you then is different than now.
Yeah, that's very true. And so we're sort of diving into the motivational maps, not the Enneagram at this point,
We'll
right?
start here, yeah, and then we'll go
Okay.
next to the other. And yeah, and plus there's over 1 million combinations, so it would be impossible if we wanted to.
Okay, got it.
And so here's the 9 motivators and the clusters, we call them. So relationship, achievement, and growth. And we have all 9. It just means that the intensity, the number that are motivators, and whether they're being met or not is something that we use the map for.
And so just a quick question, how do the words at the top, the 3 words, connect to what you're showing us as the motivators? I'm just sort of trying to make that connection.
We'll see that when we get to your
Okay,
individual
got it.
motivators. Yeah.
Okay.
So this is kind of the overview and your kind of high level. So we see for you, growth is your highest, achievement and relationship. And again, there's no judgment with any motivators, and it doesn't mean that you're not good at relationships. Achievement is fairly high, like you can do high stress for a reasonable amount of time at 34%. And it also tells us how we, in our day, think about things. So about 39% about the future, 34% about the present, and 27% the past. So it gives us an
Interesting.
idea of how we think about things in our day. And so here's your motivators. And so 20 and up are motivators. So you'll see you have 4. So your top 3 give you the most energy, with the 4th one kind of in the mix. And then your lowest one is the star. So the first one we see is the searcher. And the searcher is all about making a difference, having meaning, doing worthwhile things. And we call this a spike because it's over 30. So that means it goes from a want to a need. So if you don't have this in your life, you're not going to be happy at all. So you have to have.
Yeah, that's
So
very true about me. Very, very purpose driven.
yeah, and just look at what you're doing, right? I mean, it's
Yeah.
very purpose driven. So that really, I see the excitement with you doing that. So that it's really great. And so then the friend and the builder. So the friend is about, those relationships, continuity, belonging, those kind of things. And then the builder is an above average level of living. So money is the kind of the conduit for that, but it's more about the lifestyle than specifically the money. So here we can see where there can be potential internal conflicts for you, where with the searcher and builder, the searcher wants to do it for the reason of it's making a difference, whereas the builder is saying, well, what are we going to get out of it? So is there going to be some kind of reward? Is there going to be some kind of recognition, something that's going to lead us toward making some more money for what we want? So if you're feeling those conflicts or wondering why am I going forward and then kind of stopping, or taking 2 steps back, this will help explain some of that.
Yeah, I've navigated that. I mean, that's true for me. And I've navigated that now by putting them both together, that I could do both. So
Yeah, and
that's cool.
realizing, yeah, when we bring that awareness to it, it's like, oh, now I see that, so I don't have to feel as conflicted. How can I have that one met and that one met? So maybe 80% of what I do does energize my builder, so it's building towards, something towards my business, and maybe 20% is pro bono or volunteer or something like that, that is just for the sake of doing it. and then it helps us relax those motivators and have them met. And then the director likes to be in charge, have control over the resources, the people, this kind of thing. And the same, I see you doing this, doing the summit. You're very organized, you're in charge, and that also energizes you. So that's being met by what you're doing.
And how does that friend part come in then? Because they're all rated at 22 after my purpose motivator.
Yeah. So the friend and the director can have some potential conflict, because the friend doesn't want to make decisions that could affect the friendship, whereas the director wants to get the things done. So, you have to be a bit more directive sometimes. So if you had more staff, for example, this might come into play a bit more. But it's just realizing that when you are dealing with people, that you may notice both those tendencies where you want to get things done, and there may be a part of you that doesn't want to be as direct, because it's like, is that going to rock the boat in our friendship or connection?
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah. I could definitely see all those playing at different parts of my life. I could see flashes of this happening in different ways.
Yeah. And then for the bottom one, as the star, I'm under 10, makes it that we have less of a capacity to see it in others or to accept it in others. So for example, if your star was 10 or below, it could be you see people that are out there that are much more media, wanting the media and being in the limelight, and saying, oh, I just don't like that. They're just too much or whatever, and not seeing the value in it. And what I tell people with the star, it doesn't have to be that extreme. We kind of go to that extreme example. But as an entrepreneur, especially if we don't have some star and get some recognition and tell people what we're doing, how are we going to get business?
So this is the part of sort of getting out there and shining, so to speak. Am I understanding that? So
yeah,
that is okay. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. And one person I worked with even recognized when I brought this up, it's like, oh yeah, when I'm talking to someone, I don't automatically say, yeah, this is the next thing you can come to that I'm doing. That's part of the star, right? That recognition and offering things. And we need to do that as business owners, because people don't know what's going on, and if we don't offer. And
that makes sense.
Yeah, and I have to work on that too, because I've had people come back and say, well, I really enjoyed doing my map. How else can I work with you? And it's like, why didn't I think of that?
Yeah, very interesting. Yeah. So you mentioned that if it's under 10, right? But I'm sort of a little bit over 10. So what does that mean? I'm just curious.
It just means that you're not, you still recognize that it just is not something that you really focus on.
Okay. So it's not as not like bad for me, but it's not as big of an issue as what. Okay, got it.
It's just like, I don't really pay attention to that. So just that awareness of maybe I need to put a little bit more attention on it in certain parts of my life. So for example, when you are doing the summit or you're doing a talk or whatever, it's like, have I added in that step of the next offer, or seeing if they're interested, whatever it is.
That's definitely feels accurate so far.
Okay. And the 19 down, so the 19 to 13 ones, spirit, expert, creator, defender, and star, they, like the 13 to 16 is about take it or leave it kind of thing. 19 is too far. 20 and up are motivators, and 19. So it's not like you don't have some energy with it. So for example, the spirit is all about the freedom. And so often I see it as one of the top motivators with a lot of entrepreneurs. And that's why they left the corporate work to have that spirit. So it's actually, to me, a bit of an advantage not to not have it too high, because if we discount structures to see that we can use them to our advantage and say, yeah, actually get more freedom by putting in some structures in place. And so again, it's that kind of reframe to see that, yeah, I can have that and I can have the other part too. I don't have to be so like, don't book me into something unless I tell you at the last minute. You know, there's people like that you can't pin down to anything. But there's a basic level of even the ones that are not motivators that we want to have. So if that's not being met at a certain level, we can still get demotivated. So that's the benefit of the map, is I have a piece that you don't see here that tells me how it's being met or not.
Very interesting. So it can even highlight if my needs are being met based on my motivational style. That is really cool.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
And we'll go down and you get a bit of information. The report gives you your top 3 and your bottom 1, but I go through all 9 with everyone because I think it's important to understand those other parts of ourselves.
Yeah. I mean, I'm glad you do that because, yeah, I think that feels more comprehensive for sure. And I know we don't have time to do that right now. I totally get it.
No.
And we also need to, yeah, see how this links with the Enneagram as well.
So I'll just
please go
finish
ahead.
this last piece, and that is your actual motivation piece. And so you see you're at 69%, which is at the boost zone. So the good news is, you know, a couple of tweaks here can put you into the optimum. You're very getting up towards the optimum. So what we would do in the session is talk about specific strategies attached to your top 3 motivators. And we see here how they're being met. So the first one we'd work with is the builder, to say, what are the things we can be putting in place as reward strategies for you to bring that up? And then, you know, you'd go away with a couple of goals for yourself to implement. And then continue to look at that.
It's important to take, you know, your assessment and actually create action out of it. So yeah, that part is important for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's a very quick overview.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, it's beautiful because I mean, well, it's really to highlight the overview of like what one can expect and how one can benefit from all these things, because it's all a bunch of words until you actually understand how it comes together. And I really like how the motivational maps really not only identify your motivators and where we are and potentially where we are not getting our needs met. And so it's really almost feels very like it's honing in quite specifically. So I really like that aspect of it from what I've seen. So yeah. And so please show us about the Enneagram and how this all links. So do you do the motivational maps and then go to Enneagram, or how does that link together?
That's what I've found is easier for people, because with the Enneagram, I ask a lot of a bit deeper questions, like, why do you do that? And so when they get the picture from the map, and we've gone through that first session, because I spent about an hour with people after going over the results, then that bit of self-awareness helps them to go a little bit deeper, because with the Enneagram typing, what we do is I ask a bunch of questions. We go into yes, and why do you do that? Like, what's coming up for you? So then you go away. We usually narrow it down to 2 or 3 of the types. And then I send you away for a week or 2, and you do a self-observation practice to see, what am I focusing on? And so that first awareness piece with the map helps to build on your self-awareness of looking at your behaviors and why you're doing what you're doing when we come down to the specifics of the Enneagram typing.
Okay, so if I'm understanding you, the Enneagram, it's more of a process of identifying obviously who you are in the typing, and then you actually ask deeper questions to actually pull out the deeper answers, realizations from someone. and then you let someone sort of go off and observe self, and then you come back again. That's how you work with your clients.
Yeah. So for example, with the Enneagram, we have three clusters, we call them three intelligence centers. So similar to the map, we have three clusters there, and then we have three centers of intelligence. With the Enneagram, we have the body, which is the 8, 9, and 1. We have the heart, which is the 2, 3, and 4, and then the head, the 5, 6, and 7. So we have a tendency to overuse that particular or underuse that particular area when that's our main focus. So for example, and I know you're a 6 as well in the Enneagram. So like for me, and I know you've done a lot of personal work, so some of it might be you reflecting a little bit, because that's what I find with a lot of people have done lots of personal development. And even within the Enneagram, we talk about 9 different levels of development. We have kind of the average, and then the really kind of high spiritual connected type when we're at our, peak, and then right down to when we are mentally ill, basically, right? When we're so down, and like if I was so much in my fear, I could be so paranoid that I couldn't be around people because I'd be paranoid about everything. For example. But most people are in kind of the average range, and it depends on the circumstances too. So I might be way more in my higher part of my type when I'm working with people. But then I'm with my family and they trigger me, and I kind of take a bit of a dive into a bit more of the constriction and behaviors that are not as healthy for me.
Yes, that's being human, Robyn.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm hearing that there's like with all these grouping of the words for the Enneagram, it's they even pertain to if you're sort of more heart-centered versus head-centered versus in the body, if I remember correctly.
So for example, with the body types, there's an emotion with each of the centers. So they're more around anger. And it's not that we don't all have anger, but they tend to have a more direct connection to it, a direct line to it. So it's the way they either, like the 8 really pushes against it, very external, can look very aggressive, and we think they're really angry, but they're not. It's all about life force for the body type. So they're pushing out into the world. I had a client who worked in a prison system, and she was an 8. And you don't want to look too aggressive to a male prison inmate. So what we did is have her build a scale from 0 to 10. So when she felt her energy getting to like 7-ish, and I had her really start to observe the people she was with. Like, what is their body language? Are they backing up? Or are they coming forward? Are they matching her aggressiveness? Or what are they doing? And so she learned to start to dial it down when she started to get around that 7 mark for her.
Okay. Yeah, so it sounds like a process where you learn about yourself, and then you, with these ranges, you kind of almost fine tune yourself to even different situations in your life. As well, realizing that in life we can get triggered and we go up and down the levels. So it's really yeah, yes, and I guess the question that comes up too is that how many combinations? It's like one main one, it's combination of the 3. And so how does the Enneagram work in that way?
Okay, I'll bring up a bigger diagram so we can look at it a bit more. Okay, that doesn't want to come up. 1 sec. How do I stop share? Let me do that. Bring that one back up.
We're having a technology breath here. Everyone just take a breath.
Yeah. Oh, that's not very big. Let's see if I can increase that. That's not much bigger.
That's okay. It's fairly visible to me anyways.
Okay, great. And you can also look behind me on my screen. So you'll see as a 6, we're over here. And the 3, 6, 9 are kind of the core types. And then the ones on either side are kind of the introverted, extroverted version of it. So for example, we have wings. So as a 6, we have the 5 wing and the 7 wing. So that will modify our 6ness in some ways. And for myself, what I noticed when I learned about it when I was younger, I was much more leaning into my 5 wing, because the 5 is all about hoarding their energy. I only have so much energy, and very intellectual, very wanting to know, learning, going really deep in subjects, but also overemphasizing the learning rather than the actually getting into action and being involved and actually implementing. So for me, when I was a teenager, I lived with another family. I was with a foster family for a while, and I was learning to play guitar. And I spent hours writing out the music from my foster brother, who had all these books on music. And so I'd spent all this time writing out the music, because at some point I'm going to leave. So I'm not going to have this information instead of just playing the music. And then when I got older and felt more comfortable and more relaxed with that, my 7 wing came in much more, which is the enthusiast about the experience. So really loving to travel and, not just have lots of experiences. The problem for the 7 is it's so in the head, because they're a head type, they don't land it in their body. There's no integration with it. And so very happy, experiential people, but it's like learning to actually sit with the deeper emotions and the more difficult emotions for their full growth. So I noticed that tendency in myself with the 7. And then we have the arrows. So in times of stress, I go to the 3. Now the 3 is the achiever. They're the doers. And they find it really hard to just be. So that's their big lesson. But there's also this kind of facade, sort of a mask that they can wear, because, they can fit in anywhere, because they can achieve, they can see what's needed, they can come into the role. We jokingly talk about people who have been in these weekend transformational weekends, and we're all looking tired and haggard. And the 3 people can just look lovely. It's like, have you been at the same event? But what I found for myself when I was in a bad marriage, I really went into my 3. So I worked corporately. I wore the suits. I wore the high heels. I did all the work. Like I could be that chameleon to fit into whatever was needed. I could fit into another group within the same day. It wasn't a big deal, but that was my stress point. Instead of just being connected to who I was, it was focused on the doing. So I watched that for in myself. Am I doing too much? Am I kind of going to that stress point? What is stressing me out in the moment?
So as a 6, it's like essentially that's your, I guess, your normal home base within yourself. And when you go through experience stressors, then you could identify that, why you may go to 3, which is right across the achiever. And then the ones on the side is sort of like, it's dependent on where you're at and your internal growth, that you may sort of slide to one or the other. Am I understanding that?
Yeah, and we might have a tendency to one over the other. Like I still notice that 5 tendency in myself. So it's more about, some people are just fine with just saying, yeah, I'm really more, I use my 7 wing more. And to me, I'm also a Libra, so I like that balance thing. And so it's like, yeah, there's parts of that I can use, but I also need to watch because the 5 shuts down more around emotion, and so does the 7. So I have to watch in myself. I can go deep in emotion, and the 4, 6, and 8 are the big energy people. So I can have lots of energy and lots of emotion, but is it just wanting to express it? Or am I really being in my emotions and my feelings? Because I know that I can, those parts of me that can shut down, because it's easier to just isolate, like the 5 and just not deal with it, or the 7 and just go and having fun, or, you know, having the experience and not being with it.
Mhm.
And then the other path, the last one here, is to the 9, which is the peacemaker. The 9 is at the top of the Enneagram, and they are the ones that in the high point embody being. So the 9 can come across, they don't like conflict.
Mm.
And I didn't know how to deal with conflict. Like in my household, it was rage, it was physical. So I was scared of conflict. And so I trained, that's why I trained in conflict resolution, did a whole certification in it, so I could have my own needs met. But the 9 tendency is, we don't want to rock the boat. We want the unity. We're at the top here. We can see all sides of everything. So we'll agree with everyone, and then they can get caught in that. You know, I have a friend in business, and she said, oh yeah, I'll send that referral to you. And then I was kind of curious because I hadn't heard back. But then I talked to another friend, and she said, oh yeah, she told me she'd send the referral to me. So, you know, we can't split that person. So,
Mm. Mhm.
but that's just her way of not having to deal with the conflict.
Gotcha.
And so I don't make her wrong for it. I just say, oh, wow, I see what she's doing. And, but when we can work through that, and the 9s, when they're in their best positioning, can really hold the space. Like they're the real, embody that love. Like if you've been with a counselor or someone, you know, a spiritual mentor or someone, they just know how to hold that space in that love. And
Mhm.
they just epitomize that unity and that connection to everything.
Mhm.
And so for the 6, it's a way to relax into knowing that the love is all there, that we're all one. And that's what the 6 is about in our growth path, is having the courage to go through the anxiety and testing out authority and all the different things that we do, to being our own authority, to trusting ourselves, to having the faith and the courage to connect to everything in the universe and know that it's all there for us, that all we have to do is go step by step. We're never going to have full certainty, but when we connect to that wisdom, we know the next step and the next step and the next step, and we can help others do that.
Mm. Yeah, thank you for sharing. This is like very there's a lot of pieces to it, and sort of knowing self and understanding when we're in balance and out of balance, and how to go about it, right? And to I'm hearing even balancing this whole body, mind, heart sort of dynamic, that sort of how that plays out too. Um, and so Robyn, what would you say for, like, if someone's sort of wanting to learn more about Enneagram, motivational max, who is this for? I mean, is there a particular, if someone's sort of looking into whether that this is something for them, like what would you say to those people?
You can go, well, with the motivational map, I think really anyone that wants to know more about how to energize himself, you know, especially after COVID, and we've got new perspectives on our lives, on the world. And
Mm.
there's a lot happening. There's a lot of disruption in our life. There's a lot of things going on in the world. And
Mm.
to get more back in alignment, just doing that one session with the map is a good way to just kind of recalibrate and say, yeah, what have those shifts been for me?
Hmm. and being that we're in the beginning of the year, heading into the beginning of year where everyone is, yeah, is wanting this newness or excuse me, like to be motivated to their New Year's resolutions and goals and such. I could see that being a very, yeah, it was very succinct and powerful and easy to understand. So I could see that. And
Yeah,
how about the, yeah, go ahead.
yeah, just to answer your question about the Enneagram, again, it doesn't, it depends how deep you want to go. I guess that's the thing, is
Mm,
you can do the, usually takes 2 sessions. So, the initial assessment or questioning with the typing, and then the self-observation and coming back together. And for some people, that's all they want. But other people want
mm,
to go deeper and say, how
mm,
can I transform? How can I work with those parts of myself? I actually do shadow work as well. So we look at
mm,
parts of ourselves that we haven't wanted to look at. So the example I give is jealousy. Why would I want to feel jealous? But there's some purpose there. So when we can actually spend the time and relax into saying, okay, let's be curious. What does jealousy have to say? What does that part of me that's jealous have to say to me? Why did it come in? And then going through that process to integrate it so it's not running the show in the unconscious, because
mm,
it's there whether I'm acknowledging it or not. But once I can integrate it and see, for me, it just shows me I have a desire. That's all it is. So it took the charge off of it and
mhm,
stopped
mhm.
me judging myself for feeling that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you don't need to talk to me twice about like the importance of shadow work for sure. Like, especially if you're, you've been sort of working at those goals or you're wanting to create that impact and there's feels like there's something missing, right? So it's really important to go deeper into many layers because we got to match the impact we want to make with what we are with our internal work within us and how deep we know ourselves. Because when we're not paying attention, that's when the subconscious runs the show, right? And so, um, yeah, I see the importance of this. And so, Robyn, thank you so much for sharing all these different pieces. And I'm grateful that you went into both the Enneagram and the motivational maps because it really like highlights what's available and out there. Like before meeting you, I've actually never heard of these two things. So I'm really grateful to bring you here and to share with all of us and to walk us through it in a more in-depth way. And I mean, there's more questions I want to ask, but it's just we're just restricted with the time we have today. And I just want to check in with you. Is there anything else that feels incomplete that you want to share with the audience today?
I just wanted to give them a couple of takeaways. And our brain focuses on the negative. And for my type 6, I know that's our tendency to go to the negative, even though I'm and it took me a while to wrap my head around this because I'm a very optimistic person. But
Hmm.
yeah, there's a part of me that wants to get the negative thought out before I go to the positive. And
Hmm.
I never saw it that way. So it was a really interesting for me to see. So it takes, the Heart Math Institute said it takes about 11 seconds or 3 breaths to really bring in the positive into our brain. So next time you're thinking that negative thought comes up, whether it's just automatic or a reaction to something, take that time to just breathe into it and say, what's the positive too? And so,
Hmm.
our neural pathways in our brain are elastic, plastic, that neuroplasticity, so we can change it. So just realize, yeah, not judging the negative thought, but just breathing in and allowing ourselves to have that positive too. So that's one thing. And the other
Hmm.
is a 3-centered practice. And this is something I do every morning before I do my meditational work. So I spend 2 minutes breathing into my belly for the body center, 2 minutes into the heart center, 2 minutes into the head center, and then 1 minute feeling that connection between all three, because this is where we get out of alignment. And that's what the Enneagram work to me is all about, is that embodiment of being able to use all our three centers. And it takes practice. We forget ourselves every day, minute to minute. So allowing ourselves to do that will help us with that self-observation. So we have some distance to be able to see ourselves and what we're doing. And that's the beginning of being able to change anything, is that self-observation.
It's beautiful. So 2 breaths into the belly, 2 breaths into the heart, and 2 breaths into the head, and just sort of breathing all throughout to integrate, and just linking that in with your tip with, you know, recognizing that it takes like on average 3 breaths to really sort of allow the positive in. So next time we have a positive thought, give ourselves some space to shift without sort of jumping into judging ourselves. And so yeah, that's really important, especially when we're moving forward with everyday goals and tasks and things like that. So thank you so much for sharing that, Robyn. I think that's super helpful to know and to, yeah, put into practice right away. So Robyn, if people want to sort of connect with you, where should they go?
You can connect on the website, alifeofchoice.ca, or my email is Robyn with a Y at alifeofchoice.ca. I'm on Facebook under my name. On Instagram, I'm under Master Holistic Healer, and I'm on LinkedIn. So lots of different ways to connect.
Okay, beautiful. And I believe that you had a gift you wanted to share, a gift or offering you want to share with the audience.
Yeah, so with the Enneagram, I really believe in the experiential piece of everything that I do. So I'm having some free master classes, workshops, whatever you want to call it, where I'm going to go over all 9 types, give a brief synopsis, and then we'll actually do a little bit of a guided meditation, very short for each type. So you get a sense and get to feel into that and build a bit more kindness and compassion. So talking about notice that part in you and also in other people. So then we can see, oh, that's just, and what if I just actually looked at why they're doing that? You know, maybe they want us to be our best. You know, the ones are so much about having that perfection, and it's like not taking it personally that they're trying to correct me. It's just that they want me to be the best. And how can I work with that and not take it so personally?
Yeah, that's some powerful reframing, right? Because often with myself being a Virgo, it's very much we tend to be a bit more critical, and at the same time, it's like realizing that I do it out of intention to actually to make something better versus like wanting to judge energy. So yeah, that when you say that, that's what comes up for me, for myself, anyways. So again, always like understanding ourselves deeper and really allowing ourselves to just be ourselves without judgment. So it's beautiful, and imagine how much energy it takes out of us to fight with these things within ourselves when we could just accept ourselves. So it's very beautiful.
And the
So
oh yeah, and the offer, what I have, I've set it up for discount on the Enneagram typing. But if someone would prefer the motivational map, I'd be open to that too. So just contact me, and if you're interested in one or the other, I decided I would open up the offer since we talked so much about the map today. And so
thank you.
my offer is that you can choose one or the other at that discounted price.
All right, beautiful. And so yeah, for anyone who's listening, please reach out to Robyn and see what resonates. Maybe both does. It's a small investment for really sort of knowing and deepening into yourself, and because that alone, you can shift your entire life. So thank you, Robyn, for being here with us today. I really appreciate you, your expertise, your gifts, and sharing your wisdom with us today. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Tammy. And thank you so much for having this summit. I know how much it means to you too.
Yeah, thank you. I'm excited. We're doing this together.